like they were depositions, and yet, as Kitty can attest to, she felt safe. One of the reasons why Surviving R. Kelly has set itself apart from, let's say, the BBC documentary and other programs that have come out is because the survivor stories are so centered. How do you, as a filmmaker, make sure to center the stories and not re-victimize people and add to their trauma?
You know, I prepared for this project by one of our partners along Walk Home, who are a Chicago-based organization that work primarily with young girls, but definitely teenagers throughout Chicago, who are victims of sexual and gender violence. They were two women, the Tillett sisters, Sarah Misha Tillett, who's a professor at UPenn, and her sister Sharon Assad. And, you know, they were two women that I talked to about ethical questions. I believe in the dignity of these women. I mean, you can't deny, I wasn't giving them voice. They had their own voices already. I wasn't restoring their dignity. They came with their dignity intact. I had to do what I had done for many years as someone who's interviewed people, and you know this, you know, you just listen. You know, and active listening is, I think, so necessary in the world today. I know a lot of people in the room are media, and I wish you could kind of, you know, teach that skill to the world. It's necessary now more than ever to just give people the space to unpack their stories without looking for the sensational. In fact, in post, you know, Bree and I probably, when I looked at, say, the Michael Jackson and Finding Neverland video, and this isn't a criticism of it, but we made very different decisions around some of the salaciousness. We did have some of the survivors who got into kind of detail, and it was really traumatic. But we knew that this story could be told without some of those details. But I mean, we just owe it all to them. I mean, you know, these women were our heroes throughout the project. We started off by calling them our survivors, and as the second week into the project, we just had a board called Our Heroes.
I can also attest to it because I was sitting beside Dream because I'm like, I'm just gonna watch and see how this happens. And she was asking them questions and giving them time to respond and not rushing through the questions also just to get to the next, because of course we had sheets of picking up a lot of questions, but it's just, I think, also giving them time because this is the first time that they told, you know, anyone. Some of them haven't spoken out at all. So I think like just giving them time to answer and internalize what's been asked of them also works well.
You make a very strong point in the series to point out the system, the ecosystem that surrounds somebody like R. Kelly that enables this kind of behavior and criminality. What has, if anything, been the reaction from the fame industry?
Yeah, I mean, those are the pursuing marches I was talking about. Like, and you know, Sparkle says that he didn't do this on his own. She's referring to enablers who are now the target of an investigation, a legal investigation, because no, R. Kelly wasn't calling and booking tickets with United Airlines and giving that airline booker the girl's birthday. So therefore they knew her age. And so now they are facing, you know, this is public knowledge, but they're facing indictments, quite frankly, of being accessories to trafficking. So that's what Sparkle was talking about. That's a part of the ecosystem. That's on a micro level. You can pull out again and you can look at his record label. You know, there was a moment when R. Kelly, when it became public, when Kurt Loder, those of us who are old enough to remember, announced on air that R. Kelly had married 15-year-old Aaliyah. And That was a moment for not only intervention by the people who were connected to him professionally, but the people who were connected to him personally. I wish for his own healing and for the safety of the girls who followed Aaliyah that there had been a private intervention. That didn't happen, of course, at least not a successful one. You pull out again, and then there's his record, industry. That 2002 tape, they should have ceased doing business with him. I know they're illegal, that if someone's found not guilty, to get out of a contract with them, it's a whole legal thing. I mean, that's how Jay-Z ended up on the road with him. They postponed promoting that album, Best of Both Worlds, but once R. Kelly's found not guilty by the courts, then Jay's in breach of contract if he doesn't promote the album, right? And so I'm sure that Sony was faced with that same thing, but there comes a time when you've renewed the contract. You didn't just let it expire. So that's the ecosystem. And then you talk about collaborators, I wanted to know why Gaga, who had stood up for victims of domestic violence, did this performance on SNL where she was kind of writhing around the stage with him. And I was really pleased when she talked about, I didn't mean to kind of out her in an interview. It was my probably second interview on the topic, and someone said, why is John Legend the only star in the documentary? And I was like, well, I asked a bunch of people, and then I went on to name them. And of course that became the headline, and I didn't mean for it to. It wasn't like me calling out those people, but Gaga gave a very nuanced answer to that question, and it's online, you can read it, and I really appreciated her response. Other people like Jay-Z, I invited him, I collaborated with him on his 2010 book, Decoded, and I invited him to come before our cameras. I knew that he had regret and remorse, and I wish that as a 48-year-old man, he would have said, I wish I made different choices 17 years ago. I've grown so much. I really wish he had done that. He didn't. He rarely goes before cameras. Erykah Badu at the Soul Train Awards had said that no one had done more for Black people than R. Kelly. And I wanted to know if that included Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King. So, those were that's the ecosystem.
I think also one of the reasons why the series was so powerful is because you were also shining a light on the Black community's involvement in suppressing some of these voices who were hoping to be heard for so long. You address it in the series about the culture, I guess, revering R. Kelly as somebody who was such a superstar for the Black community and Black culture. Can you talk about the courage it takes to call out some of your own peers and community members, and why that was a critical component of the story?
I think I can confirm that most of my hurts have come from the Black community and coming forward. Because that was a musical genius in the Black community. A Grammy winner, he made the great, barbecue backyard songs for everybody to dance to, the wedding music. I worked at a radio station for 6 years. It played his music after the trial. Whatever rumors were happening, we just didn't value that this happened to Black women, So I was a part of that turned the other cheek. And then he comes in my life and I start dating him, and then I got more than what I bargained for. I didn't love myself enough. I think that has been the hardest part, but I knew when it was time for me to come forward that I needed to choose the right platform. And if I had gone to maybe an urban blog that was more, leaning towards being supportive of him like they were in the past, that my story wouldn't have gotten the traction. So it was very important to me to make a good decision and be strategic in how my story got out and who handled it. And then in comes people like Rolling Stone and BuzzFeed and Lifetime, because they're all about women empowerment, and I knew it wasn't going to be dismissive, and people weren't going to, because the platforms that I chose. So
Yeah, no, I think that there's a particular shame, that's involved with, it's compounded, quite frankly, in America. We have the U.S. injustice system, that regularly targets and criminalizes, and historically there have been false accusations of sexual crimes against black men. That's the history, literally, of lynching. So, quite frankly, to hear R. Kelly invoke lynching when he's, when there's video evidence of what he's been doing, is itself like a slap in the face to all of those people who post-Reconstruction in the U.S. South were actually wrongly accused, wrongly targeted, and then murdered. But that is the history that I knew that we were bringing, to bear. I mean, we're not that removed from our history, in the U.S. I mean, Ava DuVernay, has a docuseries, a film that's not a docuseries, but a series that just aired on Netflix about 5 boys who were wrongly accused of rape and lost their entire childhood, lost many years, lost almost 2 decades in the criminal justice system for being falsely accused. So they deserve our care. They deserve our solidarity. I don't believe, from what I have learned, that R. Kelly does. And I wish that he would own his crime and get the help that he needs.
I was going to say, as far as the black community, I know that when I talked to several of the survivors, I asked them why haven't they came forward before, and it wasn't only because they didn't have a platform, but they all said, well, I'm black, and nobody can believe me, I'm a woman. So, and also some of them have been raised in a family to where your mom, if an uncle or brother or somebody does something to you, that stays in the household. That doesn't go outside of the house. Or they're asked, well, what were you wearing? What were you doing? Why were you there? Those sort of things. So that's how I knew it was important for me to educate my own race. Because I'm like, well, it doesn't matter if he's black or white, but the fact that he's a black man, and of course people are like, you're a black woman, why are you trying to bring down a black man? But if I have to bring down a black man to raise up a black woman, that's what I'm going to do, because all these women were saying the same thing, that they didn't think that they were going to be heard or listened to or believed because they were African American women.
yeah, and then just the history in the United States with black men and being, wrongly accused of things and going to jail. I think as black women, a lot of us have been raised to be protective over black men, and when something like this happens, we don't want to, it's just kind of taboo in our community to, speak on things like that and quote unquote take the black man down, especially if he's someone powerful,